Well, and our body has so much wisdom. So, like, our body typically knows first what we need, but sometimes we've either learned to override some of the signals, or sometimes we're just not aware. We're never really taught that stuff, and it's super important. And so that could be part of it as well.
Hey, it's Joy, and this is the Joy of Neurodiversity podcast. Here we break down stereotypes, celebrate the brilliance of different minds, and get real about what it actually means to be neurodivergent. Because at the heart of it all, neurodiversity isn't just a concept, it's people. It's lived experiences, challenges, strengths, and the stories that connect us. Whether you're here to learn, feel seen, or reimagine what's possible, you're in the right place. By pressing play, you're choosing to embrace a new way of thinking, one that honors every brain for what it brings. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello, welcome back to those of you who have been listening from the beginning, and a warm welcome to those who are tuning in for the first time. I am so glad that you're here. I'm Joy Buckner, the host of the Joy of Neurodiversity, and today's conversation is one that feels especially close to home. We're diving into something many neurodivergent people or thinkers experience, but often silently, but don't always have the language for it. Dysregulation, anxiety, and masking. To explore these deeply important topics, I'm joined by someone truly special, not just professionally, but personally as well. Jill Baumgartner is a licensed psychotherapist in private practice in San Diego, California. She blends traditional talk therapy with somatic practices that honor the wisdom of the body and the intuitive guidance of our emotions. She's also trained in eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EDMR, a powerful trauma-informed modality that supports deep healing and integration. Jill is passionate about helping people reconnect with themselves, navigate past experiences with compassion, and move towards a fuller sense of wholeness. And believe me, she has done it for me a million times. She is a dear friend and someone who's personally helped me recognize and reflect on my own emotional patterns, especially when it comes to dysregulation, something that I really have been struggling with. In this episode, we'll unpack what it really means to feel dysregulated or emotionally dysregulated, how anxiety might be hiding in plain sight, and how masking, especially for neurodivergent folks, can take a serious toll. So let's dive in. Jill, welcome to the Joy of Neurodiversity. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thanks, Joy. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, listen, I feel like this has been a long time coming, and I just feel like we should say it. So Jill and I already recorded this podcast, and I'm telling you, it was Mercury retrograde because all kinds of stuff happened. It wasn't like our mouths weren't syncing up when I went to edit it, and I was like, Jill, we can put on the same clothes and fake it, or we can just do it again.
Yeah, well, today's our day, I think.
It is. So, Jill, can you just quickly introduce yourself and share a little bit about the work that you do as a psychotherapist?
Sure. I am currently in private practice, and I work with clients kind of ranging anywhere from self-growth to mental health symptoms. And I've been doing it for about 15 years now. And really, I was thinking about what I wanted to share. And one thing that kind of stands out is I think in psychotherapy, there's a lot of like interventions, and probably over a decade ago, as I was practicing, I started to question some of the effectiveness of what I was doing. And that led me down the path of learning and understanding more about the nervous system. And now I very much pepper that into sessions with clients, and I found it to be very helpful. So that's a little bit about what we'll be talking about today. But
and honestly, you have a way of explaining what's happening in your brain that makes things make so much sense. So I'm really excited for everyone to get a little taste of what it is that you can do. I know that you work with a variety of patients, but then you also have some connection to neurodivergence as well with your patients. So, how has that kind of shaped your perspective as a therapist?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I think my practice right now is primarily working with adults, but I know that even over the years, like I have seen adults come in and they might say they've struggled with X, Y, and Z their entire life. And
Mm,
so, I was even thinking about this. You doing the podcast is creating awareness and can almost be preventative. Sometimes it's just giving clients that I work with some context for their experiences where they're like, oh, maybe when I was growing up, I was dealing with this, and how has that impacted them throughout their life? Or then
yeah.
sort of how are they talking to themselves? What's their inner monologue, which we might get
Yeah.
to a little bit later as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, I mean, you and I met about 15 years ago. So right around when you were first getting started in this profession, we were marathoners. We marathoned together. and
A
um
great way to bond.
no, it's the best way. How we and I want to say that we had like these deep conversations while we were running, but we didn't because Jill was in the fast group and I was in the slow motion is better than no motion group at the way back. So I feel like I would get back to where we would meet up to run, and Jill would have long since been back and is was typically dancing at the what was like a Zumba class or something that met after we
Yeah,
did.
something like that. It was a form of dance. It was, yeah, fun. I don't know how I had the energy for it, but
She would have run. I was dying, and then Jill's out there doing dance class. But we have had countless deep conversations over the years, and you're just able to really break down like mental health concepts and the inner working of the brain and make it really relatable and digestible, and like it's just been incredibly helpful. So I'm really excited to get started.
yeah.
um and I guess for me, I should say that I wanted to do an episode about this because I realized one that I've been noticing some patterns in myself. So overwhelm, definitely having difficulty regulating my emotions, but also not realizing that I was having difficulty regulate self-regulation. And you've made me really helped me make sense of that. And I just think that it's something that not only neurodivergence experience, everyone experiences, we're not alone. So whether you identify as neurodivergence or you're just struggling with feeling dysregulated or anxious or emotionally drained without knowing why, I think it's helpful to address it. And instead of pushing through and trying to adapt or mask, I think we just need to address things full like face on. So I'm hoping that this conversation is important for people as well so that we can learn to deal with our emotions a little bit, if you're
Yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah, I was thinking also, you had asked me before sort of what got me into the field. And so that even for me dates back to probably high school. I took my first psychology class then. I loved it, but I've always had a very curious and active brain. And so I was very curious about human behavior and seeing at the time when I was younger, people would go through experiences and some people got better and some people still struggled. And so that
Yeah.
I was, kind of became my passion for how can we help other people. But I think, again, a lot what we're talking about today is relatable, just can be relatable for many people just on our day to day, let alone adding mental health symptoms and things into the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's just get down to for me, I feel like dysregulation can sneak up on me and I'm not even really realizing that I'm overwhelmed. But can we just talk about what is being dysregulated and what are some early warning signs that someone might be becoming dysregulated and how can we catch it before we're hitting a breaking point?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think if I put it in very simple terms, thinking about it in terms of like an imbalance in the nervous system, which
Okay.
can also very much affect sensory processing, sensory overload, emotional expression. So you had asked a little bit about some signs. It would be Feeling dysregulated can show up differently for different people, but it could be
Mm.
something as simple as sensations in the body, someone feeling rapid heart rate, sort of their thoughts are going pretty fast, almost feeling like they don't have enough gas in the tank to get through the day. Sometimes we can sort of seek sensory things, other times we feel overstimulated by them. So there can be a difference between what's sort of when we feel overstimulated or understimulated.
Okay. I know for me, I don't always immediately recognize everyday signs. And then I I think that I might overlook some of my red flags, and I'm still trying to figure out what my red flags might be. But I know when I get to the point where I'm completely dysregulated, I just can't do anything. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just, I have to sit on the couch or I go to sleep. Like my body will like automatically make me go to sleep. So, uh, our I know that they're different for everyone, but what might be some red flags that your body is like, okay, I need to calm down. Like we need to figure something out.
Sure.
I don't even want to say calm down because for me, dysregulation doesn't look like me being upset. It looks like me being just like closed in. Like I can't even think
Mm-hmm.
about it. Like I kind of implode, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I something that comes to mind is so the difference between like overstimulation, understimulation. So overstimulation means there's too much going on in the nervous system.
Mm.
Understimulation is like there's decreased activity. So for the first part is we can feel like a little activated. It can be hard to concentrate, be in the present moment. We can miss social cues. It can really impact sort of our interactions. I don't know if that's how
Mm.
it shows up for you, but like if
It
you're
does.
feeling dysregulated,
Yeah.
you might feel like you have to tend to a lot of things all at once, where it sort of could be difficult to feel mindful.
Mm.
And then what can happen is our system can sort of go into like conservation mode where just another part of the nervous system kicks in where then it's more protective, then it slows us down a little bit. But that's where the imbalance can happen
Okay.
is think about, I think I'd mentioned before the example of like shaking a carbonated drink over and over.
You did tell me that. Let's say it for the audience. That was something that you said to me that really made sense to me.
Right. So I think if you just sort of think of it as like you have a carbonated drink, the
Mm.
dysregulation is you just keep shaking it. Like at some point, it's going to kind of spill over and then settle. Right. But I think that's like sort of what we want to prevent ideally.
Is getting so agitated that you force your body to react in a way that it either spills over or and then has to settle back down.
Hmm. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So dysregulation and anxiety can often go hand in hand, but how exactly are they connected?
I think they can be like interrelated, right? So if part of our nervous system feels pretty activated, what can happen is we can tend to have like a little bit of worry, and
Mm.
worry is can present or like a fearfulness, or so now that's more like anxiety realm, but anxiety can show up differently at different times. So we can have like physical sensations of it, or also can be very thought related, worrying about the future,
Mm.
sort of over preparing, like things like that, which I know
Yeah.
when we've talked before, that sort of come up in conversation a little bit.
My mind is not one that just has a little bit of worry. I worry about something small and then it literally spirals into the absolute worst case scenario. And then I'm responding to this fake worst case scenario that I made in my head and then getting really upset about what's going to happen, but it's something that I completely made up and is not even logical. But it's so hard for me to get out of that. And I've actually been really proud of myself because I've been like the last month, I've been really good about not allowing myself to spiral. Like I'm just able to, not all the time, but I've been able to stop it. But I guess I was always a little bit confused as if dysregulation is just a form of anxiety or is anxiety fueling the dysregulation or are they I guess I'm so confused about that.
It could be. I mean, they're just connected in a
Yeah.
sense. Like sometimes they can play off of one another. So again, if we go back to very basic, dysregulation can be just sort of an imbalance in the nervous system. What we want to do is find balance and harmony, right? Where we can find that sweet spot throughout our day where maybe our thoughts are clear and we're able to think and make decisions. Now we're sort of in a different area of the brain where it
Yeah.
can be difficult to worry because we're so present focused.
I see. And I know we're going to talk about like the different states of that in a second. I think that that will be helpful
Yeah.
to people as well. One thing that I also wanted to touch on, and I know it's something that I really feel is fueling a bit of my anxiety and a bit of my, like when I'm feeling dysregulated or overwhelmed, is that I've realized that I'm just the master at masking. I know it's something that many of us do, especially as neurodivergents, because we just kind of walk through this world in a way that not everyone understands. And so you find yourself kind of masking just to fit in a little bit. And I honestly didn't realize that I was masking to the extent that I do. One thing that I'm really trying to do now is, and I know people mean it as a compliment, but I'm constantly being told, like, Joy, your name is just perfect for you. You're just so full of joy. You're always so happy and cheerful. And I'm not. But I realize that I present that way all the time. Even like my world, I have a friend who was a good friend, but also my old boss. And she told me, she's like, Joy, you're the scariest kind of person. And I said, why? And she said, your life could be falling apart, can be in shambles. You could be going through so much and you show up and you have a smile on your face and none of us know. And she's like, and that scares me to death because we should be able to know like when you need help or when you need support. And I realized that I do that. And I think it's masking. I think it is. And I'll be feeling horrible, Jill, horrible. But I have like this nice, pleasant, joyful demeanor. So I'm really
Right.
trying to, when people say like, you're always so happy, I'm like, I'm not. Or right now, I'm really not feeling okay. Or I'm really feeling anxious. Like I'm trying to voice when I'm having these things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably very common, a
Mhm.
lot of what you just shared, but it also takes energy to do that, to present a certain way. And whether or not you feel pressured to do that, like if you feel like you always have to be joyful
Yeah.
or not, it may have just something that became very adaptive for you. But now,
Mm,
and this is what can happen is like as we get older in different contexts, what used to work as like a coping tool sometimes then doesn't work as well. And I think that's what
yeah.
you're seeing is that some of that might backfire where then you are feeling exhausted throughout the day or at the end of the day and then have to sort of
Mhm.
like muster up energy to present a certain way.
And I feel like that. So I guess I'm assuming that masking can actually lead to deeper levels of dysregulation because your body's trying to tell you that something needs to you need to change your state, I guess is what it's saying, correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong, and then you're still saying but no, I'm fine, and your body's like but you're not.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then it just makes you spiral more.
Well, and our body has so much wisdom. So,
Mm.
like, our body typically knows first what we need, but sometimes we've either learned to override some of the signals, or sometimes we're just not aware. We're never really taught that stuff,
Yeah.
and it's super important. And so, that could be part of it as well.
Yeah, you and I were talking when we were preparing for this conversation because part of my neurodivergence is that, and I think part of your personality is that both of us need to really feel like we're prepared going into things like this. And so we had pretty in depth conversations about what it is that we were going to talk about, just so we could feel prepared. And because there's so much that we could talk about, I think that we really wanted to narrow down what it was that we might have been
Mhm.
exploring today. But one thing that you helped me realize is that for a long time, I never really saw myself as someone that was struggling with anxiety. But lately, I've been wondering if it's always been anxiety and it's just been showing up in different ways. So, in the work that you do you often see people having that aha moment, realizing that in life they've been living with anxiety all along, but the cues or the clues that are going on are kind of making it click for them?
Yeah. One thing I was thinking of just to share is the nervous system wants to regulate itself, so it will find ways to do that. And some ways are healthy, and some ways we could sort of probably run through a list or fill in the blank of unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
But looking at those as adaptive. And so, yes, in work that I do with clients, sometimes it's just asking questions to get them to become curious, right? They may have, to your point, been dealing with something for so long. And then if we just sort of pause and break it down a little bit, they might be like,
Mm.
oh, wow, I never knew that this was a certain response that I was having, or that this could
Yeah.
be a symptom of something else.
Because you told me about like the body keeping the score. I think you told me that you're the one that
Did
told me about the body keep.
the book? That
Yeah.
might have been a while ago.
Yeah. And I always think of that. Like, Joy, your body is paying attention to what it is that's going on with you.
Yeah.
And I need to keep reminding myself that anxiety doesn't disappear when we ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
It finds other ways to show up. So maybe from your experience, what are some unexpected ways that anxiety can manifest in the body? I feel like for me, because I don't recognize anxiety for myself or even overwhelm for myself, when I have someone telling me what it might look like, I end up like looking out for that to see if I'm having it.
Oh,
Is that
sure.
silly? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what might be some unexpected ways that anxiety might manifest in the body or in the mind? Yeah.
Yeah, great question, because I think this is something that is helpful to touch on. If we just sort of focus on sleep, right? Ideally, we should be sleeping and sleeping well and the quality of our sleep, but it's very common for people to struggle with sleep. And so that sometimes can sort of lend itself to like, is there a certain level of dysregulation or anxiety? Because sometimes what can happen is we're going about our day, and then we lay down to sleep, and the brain will just ruminate or have looping thoughts or worry about the next day, right? So
Mhm.
I think, to answer your question in a very simple way, is like, how could it present, is like being curious about sleep and appetite on a basic level. If our nervous system is activated, sometimes we lose our appetite.
Mhm.
So very basic,
Jill, you are speaking about me. I
relatable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So sleep and appetite are two. If you're seeing the change in them in either direction, so like it could be, does it go both
Mm-hmm.
ways? So if you're sleeping more than you normally would or not getting enough sleep, that might be a symptom of anxiety. Do we even call it symptoms of anxiety or like a manifestation of anxiety? How do you say that?
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
I think either. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
either or can work.
And then like when then so and so sleep, appetite, I it makes sense to me. Like when I'm really, really anxious, I don't want to eat and I definitely cannot sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just to go back a little bit, even the quality of sleep. So
Mm,
it's very common for people to say, "Oh, I've never slept well." Right? And so that sometimes can be a clue into, okay, well, maybe they haven't, and we're not really sure why they haven't, but maybe that has then they've had to adapt to a certain level of dysregulation, then,
mm,
if that makes sense.
yeah. I I mean, I'm sure if you went back and asked my mother, she would say Joy was never a good sleeper. I remember every single night going in and having to sleep with my parents
Oh,
every single night. And
yeah.
they would, you know, let me stay there for a second and then nicely push me back to my room. But I never slept well. And even now I've gotten much better, but I still maybe only sleep 5 or 6 hours a night. And that's
Mhm.
just not okay.
Sure.
Definitely not
Well,
okay.
yeah, I just, as we were sitting here talking too, it might be helpful if I share just the different nervous system states, because I think sometimes that's a good framework for what we're talking about.
Yeah. And it really, so it was actually the next thing we were going to move into. But yes, if you can walk us through them, it was so helpful for me you first walked me through this, and I think that it would be really helpful for everyone. So please, yes,
Sure.
walk us through the nervous system states. Let's break it down.
Okay. So something can be really helpful is just thinking of the nervous system in terms of colors, right? So, and what we'll be going over here is just according to polyvagal theory, think about we have three little Legos stacked on top of one another. So it would be blue, red, and green energy.
Okay.
So blue and red are protective aspects of the nervous system states. And then the green is more of our thinking brain. Like that's the zone of where we ideally want to be. We want to find ways to expand that energy. But if I just start from the bottom, so we'd start, it's like oldest to newest parts of the nervous system,
Mm.
an evolutionary aspect to it. So the blue is referred to as dorsal vagal. So it's just when we feel a little disconnected. So I think I had shared earlier about like when we go into conservation mode, that's
Mm-hmm.
this blue energy. Sometimes we can feel disconnected, but also it can be a little self-soothing. That's more of our parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
It's not bad. So these phases aren't right, wrong, or indifferent. They just are. When they can become a little bit tricky is when we feel like we're staying stuck. So if we're in that blue zone and we have difficulty getting out of it, right? So
Mm.
just that awareness of like, oh, we're feeling that blue zone. Okay, so that's sort of the first part of the protective part. If we look at our second Lego, that's the red energy, which is just more sympathetic nervous system. Think fight or flight activation in the body.
Okay.
So again, protective, right? Sometimes we need a little bit of an energy surge, but it can also very much just be, I'm trying to think of a good example. This space can also sort of be like we're looking forward to something and we're excited about it.
Okay.
Okay. So again, to bring it full circle to regulation is sometimes people are operating in that spot a lot,
Mm.
that red energy, but we can't stay there forever. That blue would
Okay.
have to sort of kick in at some point.
So can I maybe make it, I guess, bring it back to me? I think so. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I woke up and I was feeling really anxious, and I was like, I just really could not, like, I felt bad, like I could not get myself in a good place, and I just got up and I was like, I have to go walking,
Mhm.
and went out and started walking, and then I had messaged you, and I was just really feeling anxious today, and so I I don't know. I feel like I can envision like where I was walking in my neighborhood. I was walking and I was sending you a voice note on WhatsApp, and I was like, Jill, I'm just feeling really anxious, and blah, blah, blah. And then I think you wrote back and you were like, but Joy, that's a good thing because you got yourself out of it and went out and walked, and then you took it one step further and like you told somebody about it. So
Yeah.
is that kind of taking me from the blue, like blue energy into red energy?
Well, I think if you were feeling really anxious, you were already in the red. And then you went
Okay.
for a walk. And so what that does is it can stimulate these states are like I know I mentioned the Legos, but they're sometimes they can be blended states. Like we can get a little
Mm.
bit of a dose of one and then another. So our nervous system's always operating in the background. This is part of
Okay.
the autonomic nervous system, which just means automatic. So
Mm.
parts of this, like our heart beating and us breathing, those things are always happening, but we're not thinking about them happening.
Yes.
Right. So that's always going in the background. But then to your point, yes, I think in that moment, maybe you were a little bit in the red, you were feeling anxious, then you made a decision to go for a walk, and then you felt a little bit better. So you would have gotten some parasympathetic activity there.
I see. So if I'm in the blue, I'm sure I can give you an example for blue too. Sometimes I just get very over stimulated or overwhelmed during the day. And then literally all I can do is just like the other day, my friend messaged me and was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I can't get anything done. And I was
Mhm.
watching lawn mowing videos on YouTube. Why? I don't.
You don't
There's
have a lot.
There's this man that like mows lawns. It's so cathartic. I'm just like, look at him mowing that lawn and edging everything up. But I literally could
Yeah.
not get myself off the couch. I think I watched 4 hours of lawn mowing videos. Who does
Well,
that?
but again, bringing it back to maybe that was just what you needed. So sometimes the blue is okay. It's okay to be there,
Yeah.
right? That's like when sometimes we just scroll through our phone or we watch TV. Like it's okay. Like it's giving yourself permission to do that. And maybe that was sort of soothing for
Yeah.
you in a way to watch that.
Okay. So
Yeah, it's
it's
more
not a
like,
bad state. We just don't want to stay in one for too
no,
long.
it's not a
Okay.
bad state. It's more finding balance between the states, if that makes sense.
Okay, so Jill, what I hear you saying is that being in the blue, being in the red, it's not like it's bad to be there, and that at any given point in the day you need to be you it's healthy to be in these states, but it's when you feel yourself stuck in one energy, stuck in blue energy or stuck in red energy, that those things become problematic.
And we can have some difficulties, yes, because
Okay.
those are more protective. Like
Mm.
ideally we want to be in the green, which is it's the newest part, right? Which is all about like social connection, very much correlated to the prefrontal cortex, which is where we can think and make decisions and be in the
Mm.
moment, be curious about the cues that our body is giving us. What we want to do is find ways to sort of expand that green energy. So
Okay.
to bring it back, it could have been that there's two green examples with your walk that you shared. So you were feeling anxious, maybe a little red, then you get a little bit of parasympathetic, little dose of that, and then you shared it with me, which is the
Mm.
green part, right?
Why
Of
is that the green part?
connecting.
Why isn't walking the green part?
Well, it is too, because
Okay.
that's sort of, we can get to that. It's like the bilateral part, but the part of the green is that you shared it and then you probably felt better sharing with
Yeah.
someone,
Yeah.
right? So that the green is ideally where we want to be. We want to find more pockets of that throughout our days and in life. It helps us be more mindful and we can be present and enjoy things.
Yeah. So I guess that's another is that another red flag that you are a bit dysregulated? So for me, like for instance, I'll see friends and they're like, Joy, I just realized I haven't seen you in months. And it's because I'm in the house and I don't realize that that much time has passed.
Oh, I
So I
see.
don't,
You
so
be,
I'm not sure if it's like I'm just kind of withdrawing because I'm not.
Possibly, actually, yes. I think it kind of ties into what we're talking about. So it could be that maybe your system feels a little bit exhausted. And so then that's how you regroup, right? Withdrawing, that's okay. Maybe that's how you gain energy. That's what you're talking
Yeah.
about recently about like the awareness of being an introvert is sometimes like you just need to kind of be by yourself to regroup. But
Yeah.
then the question would be sort of, is the withdrawing creating any difficulties in your life? Then are you losing touch with people? That's where we're trying to bring these things into balance.
Yeah. I just kind of back to the introvert thing. People don't believe me, but I'm really introverted. I'm just like an outgoing introvert. I have a personality. I know how to interact with people. I'm taking an NLP course right now, and one of my classmates, someone was like, Joy, that makes no sense. You're not introverted. Like, you're so social. You're so nice and can talk to people. And she looked at them and she said, it's not about how she interacts with people. It's about how she has to refuel herself. And if she has to refuel by being alone and taking time for herself, then yes, she is an introvert. And I was like, oh, that makes complete sense. And I do like to decompress and re-energize, I can't be around people. Or even if I'm in a social situation, yes, I'm social, but I'll have to remove myself and just calm myself down sometimes because I don't like I do like being by myself.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah, well,
okay.
and I think to tie this in as well, sometimes our nervous system has to get used to these different states, right?
Mm,
So it could be that someone in theory is like, oh, I want to spend more time by myself. But then when they get that time, their nervous system has to get accustomed to it. And that can take some different skills or different awareness where they can do that and it can feel kind of like safe for them to
mm,
do that. Otherwise, parts of the nervous system might seek something like a sensory seek out something. So sometimes
Yeah.
we can seek sensory, other times we have sensory overload or overwhelm. And so we're
I
trying to
see.
find ways to manage both.
Which then makes me wonder, are when it comes to individuals who are neurodivergent, do these states look different or operate differently? Or I guess for me it's not fair to say that because we're all so different. But it makes me wonder if there
Yeah,
is a difference to that.
I see what you're saying. I mean, I think it's these nervous system states are they kind of like lay the groundwork, right?
Mm,
So just to have a basic understanding, and then it's sort of how are those presenting, in what context is that happening? So yeah, I see what you're saying, but it can be different for different people, I guess, like how certain things can show up in the nervous system.
yeah.
And then it can also be different for what is regulating to someone. Something that's regulating to you might be completely dysregulating to me, and that's okay. It's
Yeah.
just knowing your own body and your yeah.
Being aware of what your different states look like so that then you can actively get yourself in and out of them as we should be flowing through them. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes. And
Yeah.
well, I was just thinking of an example. As we were first setting up here, we were going over the lights, and I have an overhead light, but I usually keep it off. It's too much for me.
Yeah.
It like
Mm-hmm.
sensory overload. So I have this low light and then two other lights that are a little further away. But that's like, I was like, if I'm going to sit here and that light is going to going to be on the whole time, it would have
Yeah.
been a little dysregulating. Yeah.
And me too. I don't like my house is so dimly lit. And I think a lot of that is some of my neurodivergence. I have Erlin syndrome, which makes you very, very sensitive
Hmm.
to light, but it literally, I have like a visceral response to lights being too much or shining. I guess when we look at, like, for me, I've noticed that I function on very little sleep and I can push through exhaustion in a ways that I know is not healthy. And then other people, so I guess I've just adapted it in that way. Some people really shut down when they're under stress. Some people seem to kick into overdrive or almost start thriving when they're under stressful situations or in chaos. So, why do some people become hyper functional and then other people become overwhelmed? Is that kind of back to how people deal with the different states or their different energies?
Yeah, I think so. And again, it goes back to the energy. So if someone can function really well in stress, like sometimes we can do that, right?
Mm,
And that's that red energy where we can activate and get what we need to get done or think quickly in a situation that's kind of stressful. I think it just can become problematic, or we can experience difficulty when there's chronic stress. We're never really finding a way to wind down, or
yeah.
right. It would be like driving a car and you're not really ever filling it with gas or getting the oil changed. Like at some point, there's going to be a little bit of a drawback
Yeah.
that, and I think that's what you had shared as well. I don't know if you want to touch on this, but like some medical things that you like with going to the doctor.
Yeah. So thank you for reminding me about that. So I have been like, I feel like I've just been becoming a little bit more aware of my body. And I've been really working on like my mental health and just kind of trying to, I don't know. Being entrepreneur is stressful. And so I think that I've been trying to figure out ways to deal with that. But I've also noticed that I I've just well didn't just happen to notice I've gained a ton of weight. And it's something that it's one taking a mental toll on me, but then it was frustrating because I'm really not a bad eater. I was gifted with the an alcohol allergy. So I don't I don't drink alcohol. I hate fries. I don't eat like horrible food. I exercise all the time. So I'm just like, why am I'm not losing weight? And so I went to the doctor and what had convinced myself that I had like that I was pre-diabetic and my
Mhm.
thyroid was crazy. And my doctor was like, you're not pre-diabetic. You were like your charts look great. She was like, but your cortisol is through the roof and you are never going to lose weight if you are just if your cortisol levels are this high. So, and yeah, I'm still not quite figuring out how do I deal with that. But is that something that you okay, what is cortisol, and what and why would that impact like me health wise?
Yeah, cortisol is a stress hormone, so very much linked to adrenal glands. And then, again, like sort of a protective part of our nervous system where we
Mm,
need that in certain situations. But I guess the other side of it could be then we can experience things like inflammation and, right? Like these are things
yeah.
that over time could send someone to a medical doctor because now they're starting to
Mm,
feel certain things physically.
yeah.
So there are certain like metabolic things that happen that are great. Like our system will take over and be like, okay, this is happening, but we can't stay there.
Okay.
But we're
So
not
when you have
designed to
very
stay there.
high, so when you have very high cortisol level, that means that you are in a constant state of stress.
Very much correlated with stress. Yes.
Okay. So how does chronic stress impact or interfere with your ability to regulate your emotions, or to stay more grounded, or to move through the different states of like the different energies, our energies that we were talking about?
Yeah, well, it can be very much related to having difficulty managing emotions or reactions. It can also be related to like interpersonal relationships. So, how are we
Mm,
interacting with one another? Are we actually hearing the other person? Sort of the difference between hearing and listening. Can we have empathy? Very much related to these different states, and we can build that to get to
mm,
that green energy or to expand on that. That's where we have more empathy. That's where we can
okay.
connect and co-regulate with others and be compassionate. So like
Yeah.
that's sort of the buy-in there. It can very much impact our relationships in a positive way.
I know that it's something that I need to that's what I'm dealing with now. But I know that when we were talking about my cortisol, my high stress level, you talked to me about like the window of I think it was like the window of tolerance.
Mhm.
Is that related to this or no?
Yes. Yeah, the window of tolerance is similar in that we're trying to find our sweet spot of like what is the window where we can do all of these things and it's not too much for our system and it's not like we're not functioning as well
Okay.
optimally. So kind of that finding that optimal zone where we can be in the flow.
Okay. And so finding what I guess what would be an example of finding your tolerance level? Is that what I don't feel like that's the question I'm asking.
Like how would you know if you're there kind of?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, something you've shared, I mean, if we can kind of bring it back to like using some examples
Yeah.
throughout your day as an entrepreneur, when do you feel like things are manageable when you're in the flow and you don't feel overly stressed?
I never feel stressed when I'm like working with people or coaching or like having conversations. Like when it's something that I feel, I guess I feel like if I'm being like of service to somebody else, or I'm just dealing with something that is just kind of second nature. So it's very easy for me to like coach teachers or deal with students or give certain
Yeah.
techniques. I guess I'm so confident in being able to do those things that I just feel completely at ease. I don't stress about that at all. Yeah.
And you probably feel it physically, like you feel at ease in your body and right. And
Yeah.
those are all very relational. So a lot of that is
Mm,
that green energy where you're interacting with others. Like if you were sort of out of the window of tolerance, you might have been like, late to the meeting and worried about the next meeting and having a lot of thoughts. Like I'm just kind of tossing out an example of something that
yeah.
can be practical. But in those moments, you're like, oh, this is sort of a state where I feel really comfortable and confident.
Mm,
And so your
yeah.
nervous system is going to help with that. And so that's what we want to just sort of like add to. We're finding harmony in all the states, but really like where you can sort of access the green and then finding those exceptions like when is that.
That makes sense. Makes complete sense. So yeah, I guess when you I guess it's when I feel most authentic, I'm able to be in that state.
Yeah.
Yeah, and move in and out of that.
Well,
I
and
know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
uh, just to link it back briefly, that maybe you're
Mm.
not masking in those instances, which,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
So where I'm not masking in those instances. No. Yeah. That does make complete sense. So then kind of back to my I'm being more authentic me
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
leaning into what I know I do well.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm trying to think, and then I want to take it to one where you can give us, because I know you have some great tips or things that you've taught me that I have done to kind of help me get myself more regulated. But before we go there, I know something for me, and I definitely wanted to, I think I talked to you about wanting to talk to the listeners about this, but um one of my ways, like one of the ways that my neurodivergent shows up is that I am constantly looking at the big picture of things, and my brain is always going. I'm always analyzing everything and connecting dots, and it's my brain doesn't shut off. It's
Yeah.
always zoomed out. It's always like seeing the bigger picture, and it feels impossible sometimes to slow down, even if my body is slowed down, even if I'm just like almost paralyzed because I'm so overwhelmed or dysregulated, I constantly am still thinking. So, for those of us whose minds, and I know I talk to a lot of my neurodiverse friends, and they're just like, my mind doesn't ever shut off either. Like
Yeah.
it's constantly going. So, for those of us whose minds never really seem to hit pause, and they just kind of have that constant mental churn. And I know how exhausting. What is actually happening to our brains if we don't switch off? How does it impact our well being? Because I feel for me, if I understood what I'm doing to myself by not like trying to figure out ways to shut it down, if I see the importance of why I need to, I think that I might be better able to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I no, it's a great question. My wheels are turning on like how to answer it. I think one of the things that I was thinking is like with neurodivergence, if that is part of your process, it's honoring that process. Like
Okay.
it may be that you are a big picture thinker and then you break things down into smaller, like I can very much relate to that,
Mm,
right? So it's honoring that, not feeling like you're doing something wrong or you have to do it a certain way or a specific way. But then I think
mm,
it's so that could be step one. Step two could be maybe just being more curious. Like, are you generating ideas or is some of it a little bit of that worry coming in? Because that's
yeah.
how you might be able to tell, like, okay, is this just my creative process? And that's kind of cool. And here's an idea and I'll write it down for later.
Mm,
Or now are you sort of worried that you're not going to get it all done or it won't be accepted? Or so something like that is what comes to mind. And then the third thing that I was thinking of is sometimes it can just be very helpful to reconnect to the body somehow.
mm, okay.
So if you're feeling sort of overwhelmed or flooded with a lot of thoughts, or now the thoughts are like looping a little bit, sometimes just making contact, anything right and left brained, something as simple as bringing your hands and moving them back and forth. What that's
Mm.
doing is just activating different parts of the brain to help us feel more present. So sometimes the best way to be mindful is just reconnecting to the body somehow.
This is perfect. So, because the
Okay.
next thing I was going to ask you was just
Segue.
like, pray, yeah, it's a perfect segue, like for some strategies. Like, and I don't know if you taught me about the blow out the candles and or blow out the candles and smell the
Oh,
roses, or if you or if
possibly.
I taught you, I don't know, but it's something that we both use.
Yeah.
I used to do it with my first graders, like have them when they were having a moment, like, okay, listen, like smell the roses and blow out the candles. But
Yes.
what are
Yeah.
some solutions? Like what are some practical steps that we can take to regulate ourselves better when we feel ourselves in these moments?
Yeah. Well, that's a great one for a variety of reasons. So, what I
Mm,
tend to do is I give coping skills. And then, if someone's receptive, I sort of explain a little bit of the science behind it, of why it's helpful.
mm,
Sometimes that can help us buy in a little bit. Like that gets us to be curious and be like, if I did this, and how could it possibly help? So Just
Yeah.
a simple inhale, smelling the rose, exhale, blow out the candle. It's helping us pause. And sometimes just focusing on our breathing is a really
Mm.
great way to connect. But another part of that is what I tend to do is offer like what the most simple skill. Because sometimes when we're dysregulated, if there's a skill that has like 5 parts to it, it's going to be really hard to remember. So that
Yeah.
one can often just be, and it has a visual part to it. Have, if you're working with a child, or I use this for all ages, doesn't matter, have them visualize their favorite flower,
Mm.
right? And then maybe their favorite scented candle. So now it becomes a little bit more personal. There's a little bit of a connection there,
Mm.
and can be easier to remember.
It makes sense. And one thing I constantly remind myself is that your subconscious doesn't know like the difference between like reality and you just making it up. And so if you imagine those things, it's helping your subconscious mind as well to calm down. At least that's what I kind of tell myself. I could be completely lying when I say that. It's what I think about.
Sure. Well, I think your original question too was just like, what are some practical things? So I think if we
Yeah.
recap a little bit,
Okay.
so breathing, the color system can be super helpful, right? So just recognizing, and I think like what you shared, you're like, I think I'm in the blue maybe when I withdraw or I don't talk to people for a while, or maybe I
Mm.
was in the green when I went for a walk and I told you about it. Like they're so simple, but there's like a little aspect of neuroscience to it where here's this nervous system state, and then there's the awareness of when we're in it, and then
Yeah.
right it's like just building that awareness. So it's almost like planting these little seeds that are eventually going to bloom in the garden, and sometimes they bloom at
Mm.
different times, you know.
Yeah.
So there's the color system, there's the breathing, anything right and left brain. So walking might seem so simple, but it really can be helpful. If you want me to expand on that.
Yeah, Joe, it would be so helpful if you shared about the walking because it's one thing that has helped me so much lately. So tell me
Sure.
like what is happening in my brain when I do this?
Yeah, no, I think it's a wonderful example because even when you share it, like what after the walk, you feel better, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so this is a very simple thing, but there are 2 parts to it, which I tend to recommend sometimes. If we look at walking, for example,
Hmm.
it can help with feeling overstimulated and understimulated in the nervous system. So,
Okay.
for example, sometimes if we're feeling in that blue zone, it's all we can do to like put our shoes on and go for a walk,
Mm.
right? But that walking, just sort of the bilateral, it's right and left brained, that can sort of help activate us where maybe we feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Can be very helpful when we feel withdrawn or right. Okay, the other side of that could be if someone is feeling a little anxious, I might also recommend a walk to help like sort of slow down their system.
Okay.
So that might be helpful. Now they're going for a walk. They may be sort of like it's bringing some ease to the nervous system, could maybe calm their thoughts a little bit. And then maybe they start to, like you said, pick up on nature around them or start hearing birds.
Yeah.
This activates different parts of the brain as well, where we're not in the like emotional parts of the brain. It's more present centered.
I see myself doing that. Like I walk for both of those reasons. Sometimes I just need to walk to get it out. And sometimes I just need to walk to just be like, okay. And then I will literally figure out where I go based on how I'm feeling. Like if I want to
Oh,
walk
wow.
around,
Okay.
like walk by the water, or if I want to just walk in my neighborhood where I need to be a little bit more vigilant because the cars are crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, that's a lovely example too, though, of like how, what you know what your nervous system needs. If you're
yeah,
needing a little bit more stimulation, or you're like, I can't be around cars right now, I got to go over where the water is, where it's peaceful and serene. So,
mm,
yeah, those little things that are like those little seeds sort of in the garden that's eventually going to bloom. Like, we don't always see the progress that we're making, but those are the things that count. Like, small is large, but sometimes we want like solutions and we want change right away. And it doesn't always work that way.
Tell me a little bit more about the small is large.
It's just kind of related. Like, I think sometimes our brain wants solutions, right? And we want to be able to fix things.
Yes.
Sometimes what we don't realize is the little things that we're doing that are sometimes kind of nuanced. Those are the small things that can lead up to a larger change.
I love that. Okay, well, Joe, we're wrapping up or having to wrap up this conversation. I can talk to you about this forever. And sometimes I feel like as your friend, I need to be mindful of the fact that like I'm not one of your clients, that you should I shouldn't constantly be like coming to you with things, but you're just so great about explaining these things. But if I'm gonna think about my key takeaways from this discussion, I think it's been so helpful for me to understand that we need to flow like the different colored our color energy. It's just even being able for me to visualize what that even looks like and just kind of see myself like, okay, Joy, you know you might be here, you know you need to get up and move and do things like that has been so helpful. So I'm definitely going to take that away from me. And then just knowing you said that something that you said that I'm going to take away from me as well is that you just need to honor what your body is telling you and what your process is, and that what works for one person might not work for the other person, but just being mindful and figuring out what your states are, what you need to be, and honoring that is okay. And I felt like that just gave me permission to be like, Joy, you're gonna figure like no, but just thank you for giving me the permission to deal with this in a way that feels good with me, and giving for me giving permission to everyone listening, and the compassion of knowing that we pretty much know what our bodies need if we take the time to listen to the cues, right? Is what I feel like I want to take away from this. But one thing that I ask everyone that comes onto the show is, and just in line with the name of our podcast, what joy has neurodivergence brought into your life? And that could be either personally or people that you work with the work that you do, or maybe having more empathy or understanding or compassion. But what kind of joy has neurodiversity brought into your life?
It's such a lovely question. It makes me think of one of your podcast episodes. You mentioned something about neurodiversity is like biodiversity. You have this like really beautiful way of weaving that in. But really, when I think of it, I mean, even in my practice or even personal, right, like just interacting with other people, everyone has gifts and talents and strengths, and meeting them where they're at without judgment and providing a space. I think what you were saying earlier is like it sort of offers validation of like we can have our own process.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's no cookie cutter way to do whatever it is. It's just really meeting people where they're at and building relationships and connection. So that I think is what it means to me.
I love that. Thank you for that. And yeah, and just again, thank you for, I think one thing that's very difficult, and like I told everyone, I'm not upset about being neurodiverse. I'm never going to be upset about being neurodiverse, but I am often mindful of the fact that my brain is a lot different than everyone else's. And sometimes that makes me feel a little bit bad. So just hearing someone say, like, honoring what your brain needs, what your body needs, that's fine. Like I almost feel like you're just like giving me permission. You've written me like permission slip. Like, go ahead and do it, Joy.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
do it.
It's important.
So it is. It's just nice to hear someone saying. So I can't thank you enough. It's really been an enlightening conversation. It's always an enlightening conversation with you. And I hope that our listeners are walking away with just a deeper understanding of themselves, dysregulation, and what anxiety might look like. Because I know for me, it's been eye-opening. What I thought anxiety was, or being dysregulated or overwhelming, what I thought it was is not what it is. And so it's easier for me now to picture what that is. I will make sure that I'm putting your information into the show notes, but if anyone wants to contact you, where can they find you?
The best way is my website. There's a contact form on there. Also, my phone number is listed on there as well. If someone is wanting to work with me for like psychotherapy sessions, they just have to be located in California. But anything, podcasts, I oftentimes lead trainings for other clinicians, like that can be a little more flexibility there. It's just if there's a client that reaches out, they have to be in California.
Okay, so I was going to ask that. As much as I'm sure people want to work with you, if you're not in California, she can't work with people globally. But if you're in California, sorry, I'm a Colorado girl. I'm always shouting out Colorado. If you're from California or living in California, then please get in contact, and I'll make sure that all that is in the show notes for you. Jill, I can't thank you enough for spending your time coming back and doing this for me a second time out of Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's been a really enlightening and powerful conversation. I hope everyone feels the same way. And just thank you for taking your time for walking us through and giving us a deeper understanding of dysregulation and anxiety and the importance of just really understanding our nervous system and how it impacts our daily life. So you're always so generous with your knowledge and expertise. And so I really can't thank you enough. And just, I think you'd have a gift of making these more complex topics accessible. So thank you for that. To our listeners, I hope that this episode gave you something to reflect on. So whether it's recognizing your own patterns or giving yourself more grace or finding new strategies to regulate yourself, I highly recommend going for walks. It's done wonders for me. Just find ways to take care of yourself. And to our listeners also, if this episode has resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it and have more conversations about this. I think there's a lot of power behind speaking up when you're just not feeling regulated. It helps. I've done it. Try it. I think it helps you navigate your way through life. So I hope that you give yourself that gift. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe, leave a review, comment, and contact us. We really appreciate your support. But in doing that, you push out this information to the masses. So we will see you on the next episode of the Joy of Neurodiversity. Thank you so much for joining us. And Jill, thank you again.
Thanks, Joy. This is fun.
Yay, it was. Bye, everybody. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Joy of Neurodiversity. I hope today's conversation left you feeling inspired, empowered, and seen. Remember, neurodiversity isn't something to fix, it's something to celebrate. If you loved this episode, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. It truly helps more people find this space of understanding and joy. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. And let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on Instagram at The Joy of Neurodiversity and LinkedIn at Joy Buckner, and share your thoughts using the hashtag The Joy of Neurodiversity. New episodes drop every other Thursday, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next dose of neurospicy brilliance, deep dives, and empowering conversations. Until next time, embrace who you are, celebrate how you think, and keep rewriting the narrative, because the world needs your brilliance. Think big, be bold, and never dim your neurodivergent spark, because we were never meant to fit in.